वेरी वेरी गुड मॉर्निंग। स्वागत है आपका न्यू लाइसियम फॉर इंग्लिश लिटरेचर पर। डॉक्टर जेके तिवारी हियर आपके साथ है आपके दोस्त वंस अगेन मैथ्यू अर्नल्ड को कंटिन्यू कर रहे हैं द फंक्शन ऑफ क्रिटिसिज्म। what should be the function of criticism, what should be the function of a critic, and what should be the function of a poet, right? These things are to be discussed in today's class, so बी अटेंटिव। मोबाइल फोन चार्ज कर लीजिए और चुपचाप हेडफोन लगा लीजिए और आराम से सुनिए, पूरे लेक्चर को एंजॉय करिए। हाँ, चैनल को सब्सक्राइब नहीं किए हैं तो चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कर लीजिएगा और शेयर करना भी आपकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है, शेयर करते रहिएगा। और लाइक का बटन तो आप दबा ही चुके होंगे इतनी देर में ही। What is criticism? Let's see what is the opinion of Mr. Matthew Arnold about criticism. What is criticism? Then I'll come to what is a critic. What is criticism according to you? Criticism, according to Matthew Arnold, is an attempt to propagate the best that is known. Criticism is a type of evaluation, and that evaluation must be disinterested endeavor. Disinterested means neither interested nor uninterested, but disinterested means impartial. Disinterested means unprejudiced. Disinterested means neutral. Criticism is a disinterested endeavor, not to judge, but disinterested endeavor to learn. The primary purpose is to learn and the secondary purpose is to propagate. What should be learned? The best. And what should be propagated? The best that is known and thought. The best that is known and thought in this world. And thus to establish a current of fresh and true ideas. This is criticism. Criticism is a disinterested endeavor to learn and propagate the best that is known and thought in the world, and thus to establish a current of fresh and true ideas. When Matthew Arnold was writing, when he was a poet, when he was a critic, according to Matthew Arnold, that Victorian time was not suitable for writing great poetry, for writing sublime poetry, for writing epic poetry. And once the time is not favorable for the poet, then critics should come and take the charge. Critics should come and take the charge. Whatever is known must be propagated, must be disseminated, and criticism must be disinterested without any partiality. Whether you are a Tory, whether you are a Whig, whether you are a liberal, whether you are a conservative, whether you are an Indian, whether you are an English or American or French, you should not judge a piece of literature on your whims. According to your whims, literature should not be judged. Literature should be judged disinterestedly, impartially, without any prejudice, and then the best thing should be learned, and after learning it must be propagated, it must be disseminated, it must be scattered. Where? In the world. For what? For what? To create a current of fresh and true atmosphere by your ideas. You have to create an idea, you have to create a world for the writers. And disinterested means you should not be, a criticism should not be affected by psychological, historical or sociological background. Though Matthew Arnold is a sociological critic, but he says that criticism should not be biased. Criticism should not be prejudiced. psychological, historical and sociological background are irrelevant and to dwell on such topics क्या करेगा that will not lead to a great evaluation but it will lead to such aspects as mere dilettantism. In his quest for the best, a critic should not confine himself to literature of his own country. This is the universality. Right? A critic should not confine himself to his own country. Literature should be judged on the basis of not only your country but on the basis of entire literature irrespective of the country. This is the opinion of Matthew Arnold. But should draw substantially on foreign literature and ideas, because the propagation of ideas should be an objective endeavor. The propagation of ideas should be an objective endeavor, and to achieve this objectivity, a critic should not confine himself to the literature of his own country only, but he must be universal. He must judge the entire. He must take material. He must draw substantially on foreign literature and ideas. Ideas are ideas. किसी भी country से आए क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Right? So this is criticism, a disinterested endeavor to learn and propagate that is known and thought in this world, and thus propagate, and this to establish a current of fresh and true ideas. Psychological, historical and sociological backgrounds are irrelevant, and to dwell on such topics is mere dilettantism. And in the quest of best thought, in the quest for the best, critic should not confine himself to the literature of his own country, but he should also draw on foreign literature as well. Alright, and the propagation must be objective endeavor, objective attempt, objectivity is important. Then what should be the function of criticism? As the definition says, to learn and to propagate. Arnold admits that the critical faculty is lower than the creative. Critical faculty is lower than the creative, and this was also accepted by William Wordsworth. First line is accepted by Wordsworth, and it is once again accepted by Mr. Arnold. With Taine, Arnold believes that the creation of a masterwork of literature, two parts must conquer. Literature is synthesis, and two parts must conquer. What are the two parts that must be synthesized in order of creating new thing? In order to create new things, there must be a synthesis of two parts. And what are the two parts? Power of the man and the power of the movement. Power of the man and the power of movement. And man is not enough without the movement. As I had told you in the previous class, Taine की जो theory है, race, movement and milieu. These three are the shapers, are the makers of literature. And in order to create a great literature, you have to combine, you have to synthesize 2 points at least. This is the view of opinion of Matthew Arnold. The function of criticism is not merely judgment in literature. Function of criticism is not only to announce judgment. This is right, this is wrong. This is true, this is false. I agree, I don't agree. This is not the purpose of criticism. This is not the function of criticism. Right? This is not the only function of criticism. You don't have to be judgmental all time. But you should be disinterested a disinterested endeavor to learn and propagate the best that is known and thought in the world, and thus to establish a current of fresh and true ideas. The function of criticism lies in the definition of criticism. Criticism is a threefold activity. According to Matthew Arnold, it is a threefold activity. And what are the three folds? Criticism is a threefold activity. It is personal culture. Personal culture means to learn the best that is known and thought in the world. To learn, that is personal. To learn, that is best and thought in the world. And the second is the service to society. How to serve the society through your criticism? By propagating the best that is thought and known in the world. And the third fold is service to literature. And what will be the service to literature? To establish a current of fresh and true ideas. Matthew Arnold's criticism is of threefold. First one personal, second one social, and third one literary. Personal, what is personal? Personal culture is to learn the best that is thought and known. Second is the service to society, to propagate the best and thought, to propagate the best that is thought and known. And third is the service to literature, by establishing a current of fresh and true ideas. Matthew Arnold's criticism is of threefold: personal culture, service to society, and service to literature. Alright, threefold criticism है मैथ्यू अर्नल्ड का. What should be the duty of the critic? To learn and propagate. That is number one. Every critic should try, should endeavor, and possess one great literature, at least besides his own. Suppose that you are living in India, you are well aware of your Indian literature, and you only know Indian literature, then you can't be a good critic. If you want to be a good critic, then you must know the literature of at least one foreign country. And the great critics of India like Namwar Singh, like Professor Rajnath, like Vijay Kumar Das, like Acharya Ramchandra Shukla, right? They were not the men of single literature, but they were the men of literatures. And once you are aware of several literatures, then only you can judge. So this is the suggestion of Matthew Arnold, that every critic should try and possess one great literature apart from the literature of your own country. Right? Without knowing Western poetics, you cannot analyze Indian poetics. Right? In the same way, without knowing Indian poetics, no Westerner can analyze the Indian poetics, Western poetics. Right? So they are complementary. So Arnold suggests that a critic must know at least one great foreign literature apart from his own. And the more unlike his own, the better. This is the minimum equipment to be a critic. How to be a critic? Right? Minimum equipment to know, to try and possess one great literature. And the second, to be true to his vocation, he should aspire for even more. अगर उसे एक एक्स्ट्रा पता है तो he should not stop here. He should aspire for even more for knowledge of Greek, Roman, Eastern antiquity and of all European literature, looking upon himself but as a member of cultural confederation bound to a joint action and working to a common result. Minimum equipment is to know only one literature and maximum you can learn many, but you must be knowing. You must know at least Greek, Roman, at least one Eastern, and then only you can be a great critic. These are the criteria to be a good critic. You must possess at least one foreign good literature. Number 2, you must possess one good literature. Number 2, you must try to learn more and more. You should increase your umbrella. You should increase your knowledge in order to evaluate, in order to judge others. Right? The golden age, the glorious age, that was the age of antiquity, classical age, to promote literary culture, or in Edison's words, Joseph Edison had said that he wanted to bring philosophies from the closets of the libraries to the coffee house, to the coffee table in fact. So this is the purpose of a critic, to propagate the best that is thought and known, and Edison had also said the same thing, that he wants to bring philosophies from the closets of the libraries and put those philosophies on the coffee table so that everyone who comes for a cup of coffee must enjoy the philosophy. They should not be restrained, they should not be confined, but they should be known, they should be propagated, and this was the function of criticism, this was the function of literature, right? By in this way making the best ideas prevail, it tends at last to make an intellectual situation of which the creative power can profitably avail itself. Presently, these new ideas reach society and there is a stir and growth everywhere, but out of this stir and growth come the creative epochs of literature. Right? How to create a creative epoch of literature, how to create an environment of literature, इसकी बात कर रहे हैं. And this is illustrated in the Greece of Pindar and Sophocles and England of Shakespeare, which are two of the most glorious ages in poetry. The time of Greece when Pindar was writing, when Sophocles was writing, the period of England when Shakespeare was writing, those were the glorious eras, those were the glorious times, and it is the duty of the critics to create such atmosphere again in order to get produced the great literature, right? That is the golden age. And according to Arnold, the critic's duty is to provide its equivalent by propagating the best that is thought and known. Such an atmosphere was formed for Goethe. Goethe was a philosopher, Goethe was a critic, and Goethe was a poet. But when Goethe was writing, the atmosphere was not good for good poetry. And what happened then? Then Goethe became a great critic. Right? Goethe, by the many-sided learning and the long and widely combined critical effort of Germany, when there was no national glow of life and thought, there is in Athens of Pericles और द इंग्लैंड ऑफ एलिजाबेथ, राइट। जो पेरिक्लीस के टाइम पर एथेंस था, ग्लोरियस पीरियड जिसको कहते हो, जो पिंडार के टाइम पर ग्रीक था, जो एलिजाबेथ के टाइम पर इंग्लैंड था, वैसा माहौल नहीं था जर्मनी में। किया क्या गया? एन एटमॉस्फेयर वाज फॉर्म्ड, बनाया गया था एटमॉस्फेयर फॉर गेटे by the many-sided learning and long and widely combined critical effort of Germany, when there was no national glow of life and thought there as in the Athens of Pericles or England of Elizabeth. It is true that it's not possible to create such an atmosphere in a single day, but if you are working continuously, you can definitely create. It will take time, but finally that glorious movement can occur, can come, and definitely will come, and then great poetry must to emerge. It is true that it takes a long time for criticism to bring such an atmosphere about, and generations of critics die before it comes to happen, but this is the only way to create a favorable climate for the growth of literature. If you want to see the growth of literature, then you have to create. It is also possible that many generations will die, but you will be creating an age and atmosphere where such poems could be possible. And in this sense, criticism is a joyfully creative, as joyfully creative as literature. Criticism is also creative. In epochs of barrenness, it alone is literature, no other creation be possible. And this epoch of barrenness is the Victorian period. And during this Victorian period, this is the barren period, epoch of barrenness. No literature is possible. Then criticism itself is a literature during this time, and this criticism will definitely create a new world, and that new world will be dominated by writers, by poets like Shakespeare, by poets like Mr. Homer. Right? Duty of the critic. The duty of the critic is to create an atmosphere for the poet. Arnold says that the duty of the critic is to learn and understand. Number one, to hand on the ideas to others, to convert the world, and to prepare suitable atmosphere for further creative genius and writer. This is the function, this is the purpose of a critic. Right? In the broadest term, the function of Arnold's critic is to promote culture. More specifically, that part of culture which depends upon knowledge of letters. The purpose of critic is to create an atmosphere, and the purpose of critic is to create, the function of critic is to promote culture, more specifically that part of culture which depends upon knowledge of letters. Knowledge of letters means knowledge of literature. Thus, essentially the critic must propagate noble ideas, must propagate the best ideas that he has mastered, that he has learned. He must repeatedly stress them, for only then he can make them prevail, and to prevail those ideas are important. Alright, this was the definition of criticism, and finally the function of a critic. I hope आपको समझ आया होगा. नहीं आया होगा, comment box is open for you. You can write, you can drop your message, I'll come back to you. And then there is another book by Matthew Arnold, Culture and Anarchy, an essay in political and social criticism, and here he defines culture, and he defines a very few words like Hellenism, Hebraism, barbarism, right, sweet and light. Such words are given here. These words are important, not the entire book. Right? It was a series of periodical essays on politics and on society, published in Cornhill magazine, and the book popularizes a few literary terms like culture, sweetness and light, barbarian, Philistine, Hebraism, and one more, Hellenism. And Hellenism and Hebraism is very important. Alright, Hellenism, Hebraism. Hebraism, the word has been derived from Hebrew, right? Hebrew, the language, but it has very different connotation in field of literature. First word is Philistine. Who is Philistine? Philistine is one who doesn't have any interest in art, culture and literature. One who is a bit Puritan and does not enjoy literature, culture, doesn't believe in aestheticism, doesn't believe in the power of literature, उसको कहा जाता है फिलिस्तीन। ये बिल्कुल सिंपल सी भाषा में आपको बता दिया है। Philistine is a derogatory term that describes a person who is narrow-minded. Who is narrow-minded, he is known as Philistine, and he is hostile to the life of the mind whose materialistic world is everywhere. उसको निगेट करता है। नैरो माइंडेड जो लोग कंजर्वेटिव होते हैं उनको फिलिस्तीन कहा जाता है। Philistine is a person hostile to aesthetic and intellectual discussion. Who is hostile to aesthetic and intellectual discourse was common British usage by the decade of 1820s, and it was applied to the bourgeois, merchant, middle class of the Victorian era. Right? The people who were capitalists, the merchant middle class, they were described as Philistine because they did not prefer literature. They did not prefer any type of entertainment. Their sole aim was to earn money, money and money. Such materialistic life was described by Matthew Arnold as Philistine. Alright, Philistine were people who were hostile to intellectual discourse, who were hostile to aesthetic discourse and who were hostile to everything positive. वो फिलिस्तीन थे। The people who believe most that our greatness and welfare are proved by our being very rich, and who most give their lives and thoughts to becoming rich, are just the people whom they call all the Philistines. समझ गए? ऐसे लोगों को हमारी सोसाइटी में फिलिस्तीन कहा जाता है। ऐसे निर्धनों को फिलिस्तीन कहा जाता है जिनके पास धन के अलावा कुछ नहीं होता। ऐसे निर्धन जिनके पास धन के अलावा कुछ होता ही नहीं है, वो लोग फिलिस्तीन कहे जाते हैं। उनका एक ही ऑब्जेक्टिव होता है मनी 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 मनी, मनी राम मनी राम, मनी राम के बाद फिर धनी राम धनी राम धनी राम। राइट, वो होस्टाइल ही होते हैं आपके आइडियाज के, आपके एस्थेटिसिज्म के। वो वर्ड्सवर्थ की ब्यूटी नहीं एंजॉय करते, वो खाली गांधी की नोट एंजॉय करते। The next two terms, Hellenism and Hebraism. These are the two terms, not negative and not anti. The uppermost idea with Hellenism is to see things as they really are. The uppermost idea with Hebraism is conduct and obedience. Hellenist Hellen से बना है, and Hellenists are those who questions everything. The governing idea of Hellenism is spontaneity of consciousness, that of Hebraism strictness of conscience. Strictness of conscience is Hebraism and spontaneity of consciousness is Hellenism. To get rid of one's ignorance, to see things as they are, and by seeing them as they are, to see them in their beauty, is a simple and attractive ideal which Hellenism holds out before human nature. And from the simplicity and charm of this ideal, Hellenism and human life in the hands of Hellenism is invested with a kind of aerial ease, clearness and radiancy. They are full of what we call sweetness and light. Difficulties are kept out of view, and the beauty and rationalness of the ideal have all our thoughts. As Hellenism speaks of thinking clearly, seeing things in their essence and beauty as a grand and precious feat for man to achieve, Hebraism speaks of becoming conscious of sin of awakening to a sense of sin as a feat of this kind. One believes in rationality, one believes in questioning, and the other one is believes in belief. Hellenism and Hebraism. Then he divides the society into three parts. English society is divided into three classes, and these three classes are aristocratic class, the Philistines, and the populace. Aristocratic class is the capitalist one, the Philistine is the middle class, and populace is the working class. He finds anarchy very common in these class of the time, and the aristocratics are called barbarians. Aristocratics are called barbarians. The Philistines are called the middle class, and the populace is called the working class. इनको मैच करने का क्वेश्चन भी पेपर में आ जाता है. Philistine is the middle class, aristocrats are barbarians, and populace is the working class. People who are working, they are the lower class who are suffering, who are working day and night to get their livelihood. They are known as populace, and one who is completely involved in earning and collecting money, they are called Philistine, and one who has become totally barbarous is called aristocrat. All right. Any confusion? Done. Hellenism, Hebraism, populace, Philistine, barbarians, these are the terms that occur in this book, right? Hebraism stood for conduct, obedience, and conscience. Hebraism stood for conduct, क्यों भाई? Hebraism stood for conduct, conscience, obedience. Obedience, and Hellenism stands for spontaneity, realism, and consciousness. Realism, spontaneity, and consciousness. This is the difference between Hellenism and Hebraism. All right, function of criticism, and then culture and anarchy. All right, I hope everything will be clear to you, and if everything is clear, then bye bye, take care, all the best. मिलते हैं next class में, that will be on study of poetry. What's Mr. Matthew Arnold's touchstone method, and his criticism of Geoffrey Chaucer, his criticism of Robert Burns, his comments on Wordsworth, his comments on Shelley and other poets. All right, thank you so much. लाइक करिएगा, शेयर करिएगा, सब्सक्राइब करिएगा, और हाँ कमेंट बॉक्स में जाके कमेंट जरूर करिएगा. नेक्स्ट जल्दी मिलते हैं. बाय बाय, जय हिंद. कीप ऑन योर प्रिपरेशन, राइट? प्रिपरेशन कंटिन्यू रखिए, एंड दैट विल डेफिनेटली गिव यू योर सक्सेस. गुड लक.